Hello everyone, how are you all doing today? I'm Cerceon and this is Cerceoff. He's a little off. Why is that? Well, the whole world is about to end, and instead of going through the trials and tribulations to save it, Cerceoff has decided now is the perfect time to catch every shiny Pokemon in the game at full odds. That means no shiny charm and no completed or perfected dex entries to increase their shiny rates, which will be stuck at the default 1 in 4096 odds for the foreseeable future. Before beginning Cerceoff's shiny hunting adventure, let me take you back in time and tell you just how Cerceoff managed to get here. It all started when Arceus made what may be his biggest blunder by sending Cerceoff to the world of Pokemon. After waking up on Prelude Beach and being greeted by Professor Laventon, we watch his Pokemon flee the scene before heading up the trail to pick up Cerceoff's newly transformed Arcphone. We then helped Laventon catch his runaway Pokemon, who decided Cerceoff was just the person who could help him complete the world's first Pokédex. Before we could tell Laventon how completely uninterested we were in doing that, Cerceoff was grabbed by the arm and dragged to Jubilife Village. Upon his arrival, he was called sus by his street cook before being mocked for his flimsy fashion and told if he can't pull his weight around here, he'd be thrown to the wilds. The next morning, we're called to Captain Celin's office, who tasked Cerceoff with catching a Bidoof, Starly, and Shinx in the Obsidian fieldlands. Before departing for the fieldlands, Professor Laventon decides to aid Cerceoff's endeavors by allowing him to take one of the 3 Pokemon he caught the prior day. It's absolutely imperative that we choose Cyndaquil here for reasons I'll discuss a bit later, but for now, we head to the front gate where Cerceoff is challenged to his first battle. A few consecutive quick attacks make short work of Bolo's Togepi as we then make our way for the fieldlands shortly afterwards. Cerceoff manages to pass the trial in no time, catching each of the desired targets with ease before returning to Jubilife Village to receive the Survey Corps uniform from Captain Celin. After changing into our new apparel, we head back to the Galaxy Hall where Celin gives us a cap to finish our fit before we head upstairs where Cerceoff is forced to undergo Commander Commodore's initiation ritual. Having been successfully thrown into a wall, we're now officially a member of the Galaxy Expedition team and get told by Captain Celin that we need to complete work on our Pokédex if we wish to climb the ranks. After completing Akari's crafting tutorial, Professor Laventon hands Cerceoff a spiral-bound Pokédex and tells us to meet him at the fieldlands to begin filling out some entries. But this, folks, is where I step into the story. You see, there are quite a few Pokemon that Cerceoff just won't be able to obtain if we're to set up his file the way we want to. These Pokemon are the legendaries, the Pokemon that require using certain style moves to evolve, and the post-game starters you receive from Professor Laventon. I also threw in the evolutions because getting them from space-time distortions would take too long for my sanity to handle, so I gathered them all up on my Kanto-only file and transferred them to Cerceoff's pastures with the use of Pokemon Home. Unsurprisingly, all the new dex entries gave Cerceoff enough research points to increase his rank, so we reported to Captain Celin to receive our first star. The next day, Akari challenges us to a battle and we wash her Pikachu with our stat-boosted Oshawott. We then head back to the fieldlands where we're forced to battle Mai in order to progress the story. Her Munchlax eventually goes down after a non-stop barrage of tackles from Oshawott, after which Cerceoff gets tasked with defeating an Alpha Pokemon that's causing trouble at Deer Track Heights. Instead of doing that, however, Cerceoff decided to weaken the Alpha Kricketune with Rowlet's Gust before catching a musical menace in a Pokeball. With Kricketune quelled, we receive a look of kindness from the Deer Track's protector Weirdeer before Akari swings by to help us set up a secondary base camp. After completing its construction, Cerceoff and co went to the Wallflower for some food and rest, where Benny told us about a Cleavor that's been making ribbons out of fellow Survey Corps members. The following morning, we get summoned to Commander Commodore's office, where Cerceoff meets the leaders of the Diamond and Pearl clan before being tasked with finding out why Cleavor's suddenly gone bug wild. We return to the fieldlands to find Cleavor's warden Leon, who refuses to let Cerceoff see Cleavor unless we can defeat his gruesome Goomy. Leon's Goomy takes a dirt nap after 2 tackles as he tells us that even an offering of Cleavor's favorite foods failed to quell its rampage. With that knowledge obtained, we report our findings to Professor Laventon, who comes up with the ingenious idea for Cerceoff to throw Cleavor's favorite foods directly at its frenzied face. Before Cerceoff could put this brilliant plan in action, Mai took him over to Deer Track Heights, where we learned to summon Weirdeer with a flute Adaman gave us. Now that we're able to trek across the fieldlands at a much better pace, Cerceoff can begin to catch all the Pokemon he'd been putting off until now. Those Pokemon being Drifloon, Zubat, Kricketot, Burmy, Eevee, Ponyta, Wurmple, Pichu, Psyduck, 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 Silcoon, Beautifly, Mime Jr., Weasel, Abra, Geodude, Cascoon, Dustox, Babero, Staravia, Paris, Pikachu, Baneri, a female Combi, Psyduck, Scyther, Machop, Magikarp, Stantler, Munchlax, Mothim, Luxio, Wormadam, Drifbloom, Luxray, Kadabra, Shellos, Gastrodon, Hisuian Quillfish, Mr. Mime, Alakazam, Snorlax, Rapidash, Floatzel, Parasect, Cherum, Lopunny, Graveler, and Heracross. During this massive catching spree, Arceus managed to find a full-on shiny Luxio, which was immediately caught without hesitation. But with no more Pokemon left to catch at the moment, we made our way to the Grand Tree Arena to tell Leon about our plan to pacify Kleavor. Irida didn't take Arceus' sacrilegious suggestion too kindly, but our Cyndaquil swiftly put both her and her Glaceon in their place. Our bombs are then prepared as we readied ourselves to face the frenzied Lord of the Woods, who Arceus continually baited into slamming headfirst into the walls of its arena. This gave us more than enough time to pelt it with some soothing bombs, which eventually ended Kleavor's rampage. With our job in the fieldlands now done, we head over to Professor Laventon, who told Arceus he had gained enough research points to increase his rank. So when we returned to Jubilee Village, Arceus went straight over to Captain Celine to receive his second star. Commander Commodore congratulated us for accomplishing our mission before we were dismissed and met with Vesa outside the Galaxy Hall to begin the quest to acquire Spiritomb. The next morning, we meet Arezu, who's here to speak to Commander Commodore about an Ursaluna that's rampaging in the Crimson Mirelands. Arceus is of course tasked with tackling the issue, but gets challenged to a rematch by Akari before he can set off. A strong-style Leafage from Rowlet takes out her Mime Jr., while Oshawott strong-style Aqua Jet makes short work of her partner Pikachu. This was done so Cyndaquil, Rowlet, and Oshawott could all be Research Level 5 before Arceus evolved them into Quilava, Dartrix, and Duwatch. They weren't the only Pokemon being evolved, as we then evolved our Zubat into Golbat and then into Crobat immediately afterwards, thanks to all the friendship points it acquired during Arceus' catching spree. Crobat was going to be quite helpful in progressing us through the Mirelands, as well as sending any wild Pokemon to sleep to make them easier to catch. When we arrive in the Mirelands, we get sent towards the Solaceon ruins to meet Warden Kalaba, who calls Arceus a bully for giving Kleavor a concussion before telling him to get lost. We're then approached by Volo, who was itching for another battle, but barely got a single turn as our Crobat took out both his Pokemon in a single hit. Volo then tells us Kalaba is in a sour mood because some bandits made off with a fragment of the ruins wall before pointing us in the direction of their campsite. Once there, Arceus gets accosted by the Misfortune Sisters, Charm, Coin, and Clover, as Coin decides to test her luck by battling us, which is a decision that instantly ended in failure. We deliver the stolen wall fragment we received from Coin to Warden Kalaba, who decided Arceus may not be so bad after all, before asking us to help her calm down the rampaging Ursaluna. To do this, we'll need to tougher it out through battle first, which is easily done with 2 of Charm's energy balls. Kalaba then gives Ursaluna some Toxicon, which calms the Berserk Bear down before teaching Arceus how to summon it with his Celestica flute. While Arceus was trekking through the Mirelands in search of a P-block, he managed to run into not 1, but 2 full-odd shinies, which only fueled his desire to put his insane plan in action. When we go to tell Laventon what happened, he informed us of an alphabetical stowaway that's been hitching a ride on Arceus' back, which triggers the beginning of the Unknown quest line. When we return to Jubilee Village to inform Commander Commodore of our successful mission, we learn that Arezu's been hiding the fact that their noble Lilligant is currently out of control. We're then sent straight back to the Mirelands to investigate the reason why and quickly find Arezu thanks to Ursaluna. She tells us she sprained her ankle while gathering the ingredients to make bombs to soothe Lilligant's frenzy before Kalaba and Adamant come in to give her first aid and take the bombs over to the Brave Arena. Before facing Lilligant, Arceus decided another catching spree was in order and spent the next few hours catching Onix, Stunky, Skuntank, Carnivine, Badoo, Tangela, Ralts, Pachirisu, Barboach, Roselia, Ghastly, Hippopotas, Haunter, Yanma, Hippowdon, Teddiursa, Togepi, Petalil, Turtwig, Whiscash, Rhyhorn, Sudowoodo, Bonsly, Porygon, Porygon 2, Porygon Z, Lickitung, a male Curlia, Roserade, Murkrow, and Honchkrow. With our catching spree concluded, we made our way over to the Brave Arena, where Surseoff received some words of advice from the Peanut Gallery before preparing to tango with the Lady of the Ridge. Sadly, there are no wolves for Surseoff to slam Lilligant's face again, so we just resort to dodging her moves until she tires herself out before pelting her with a soothing barrage of bombs. We eventually suppress Adonso's delirium and receive a round of applause from our backup crew before heading to Professor Laventon to tell him the good news. He sadly informed Surseoff that he hadn't received enough research points to increase his rank before escorting him to Jubilee Village, where Commander Commodore gave us a pat on the back for a job well done. The next day, we learn Arceus has decided to be a hairdresser for the village before Commander Commodore drags Surseoff down to Prelude Beach so he could threaten him without any witnesses around. Akari thankfully swings by before Commodore could put these words in action, as Surseoff then went back to the village to style up his hair and purchase some finer attire. We then head to Commodore's office and receive our next mission, which is to survey the lordless Cobalt coastlands and figure out why shadowy figures are attacking the locals. Unfortunately, due to our low ranking, Surseoff is restricted from traveling to the coastlands, so he ran around the fieldlands to catch all the Pokemon he missed on our last go-around. Those Pokemon include Chimchar, Cherubi, Happiny, Gyarados, Staraptor, Sneasel, Ursaring, Toxicroak, and Licky. While waiting for the space-time distortions to appear, we managed to score a Sunstone and a piece of Black Augerite, which Surseoff took as a sign to start evolving some Pokemon. So he evolved Dewott into Hisuian Samurott, Dartrix into Hisuian Decidueye, Quilava into Hisuian Typhlosion, Turtwig into Grotle, Chimchar into Monferno, Petalil into Hisuian Lilligant with the Sunstone, Scyther into Kleavor with a Black Augerite, and Ursaring into Ursaluna with a Peat Block during a full moon. With all these new entries acquired, Surseoff managed to gain just enough research points to increase his rank and went straight to Captain Celine to receive his 3rd star. With the proper rank obtained, we now have access to the coastlands and travel there post-haste. Once there, we're told to find a man named Iskin in order to find a means of sailing to Firespit Island. Before we can do that, Irda decides she wants a rematch, which is over in just 3 turns thanks to Typhlosion. She then points us towards a cliff in the distance and asks Surseoff to aid Warden Paulina in raising the prior lord's offspring into a noble. When we get there, Paulina tells Surseoff flat out that she won't allow anyone to force her traumatized pup to take its father's place before pointing us in the direction of Iskan's hut. There we meet the Maripishman of the Hour, who states we'll need the aid of Dusclops if we want to prepare some bait to draw in Basculegion. A quick trip to the Dreadwood Grotto nets Surseoff the Cycloptic Spectre, who we half fire a dark pokes at a slab of meat to create some spectral steak. We then take that spectral steak to the seashore in order to give Basculegion the 5-star catering experience, complete with the Seaside Serenade. This earns Surseoff the Phantasmal Fish's undying support, which we'll need to help rescue the Growlithe if the Misfortune Sisters decided to dognab. However, Surseoff decides to put Paulina's panic attack on hold until he's caught all the new Pokemon in the area. Those Pokemon being Duskull, Chatot, Remoraid, Golduck, Aipom, Spheal, Glameow, Skorupi, Vulpix, Machoke, Purugly, Hisuian Growlithe, Mantike, Mantine, Tentacool, Tentacruel, Finneon, Lumineon, Basculin, Celio, Walrein, Octillery, Piplup, Magnemite, Magneton, Rhydon, Chansey, and Magmar. With most of the new Pokemon acquired, we head towards the Molten Arena to battle the treacherous trio of thieves. Both Clover and Koi meet a similar fate as Decidueye annihilates their only Pokemon with consecutive aerial aces. Charm is the last sister standing, but both her Pokemon get one-shot by a magical leaf from Decidueye and a Night Slash from Samurott. Before the Misfortune Sisters could go for round 2, Polina's Meekly Mutt arrives on the scene and evolves upon seeing its brother in peril. A tear then forms in the sky which strikes Arcanine and imbues it with divine power, thus sending it into a frenzy and forcing an immediate retreat from the premises. Some bombs are prepared with the help of Irida, who arrives on the scene shortly afterwards before Surseoff steps forward to face a conflagrant K9. Simply dodging its attacks until it attempts to charge its super move is the best way to steamroll this hot dog, and within minutes, Surseoff successfully managed to put its temper in check. Polina then said bye-bye Arcanine before he went back to base camp so Surseoff could evolve all the Pokemon he's been leveling up throughout his coastlands escapades. Those being Monferno into Infernape, Grotto into Torterra, Aipom into Ambipom while knowing double hit, Hisuian Growlithe into Hisuian Arcanine with a Firestone, Vulpix into Ninetales with a second Firestone, and Rhydon into Rhyperior with a Protector. Sadly, all this catching and evolving didn't even put Surseoff halfway towards increasing his rank, so instead of reporting to Commander Commodore, Surseoff went to the fieldlands so he could increase all his trade Pokemon to research level 9. To accomplish this feat, we use Bidoofs and Starlies as dummies to spam strong and agile status moves on, since they won't gain any research points if they end up attacking us. After that, Surseoff moved on to the Alpha Snorlax, who we use attacking moves on since it could tank so many blows. Of course, this progress was stunted due to most of these Pokemon disobeying Surseoff's orders, but slowly we were able to land enough hits to end this insufferable nightmare after 3 hours. Surseoff's madness was ultimately rewarded though, as he just barely managed to squeak out enough research points to increase his rank and receive his 4th star from Captain Celine. The next day, we get tasked with confronting the frenzied lord of the Coronet Highlands before being challenged to a battle by Adamant. Typhlosion takes care of both his Pokemon with ease, as Surseoff is then told by Captain Celine to go to the training grounds to meet Ingo, the man who will be accompanying us through the Highlands. Upon arriving at said Highlands, we get accosted by a disgruntled Melly who sabotages our route through Wayward Cave by snuffing out all the lights. Surseoff confronts Melly afterwards, who challenged him to a battle which resulted in his Skuntank getting absolutely blitzed by Typhlosion. With Melly out of our hair for the next few minutes, we continue on through the Highlands until we reach a dead end. While waiting for his trusted Sneasler to arrive, Ingo decides to pass the time by challenging Surseoff to a battle. Decidueye destroys Ingo's Machoke with Brave Bird before we switch into Samurott to take out the following Gliscor with Icy Wind. Ingo's remaining Tangela doesn't stand a chance as it's immediately bodied by another Brave Bird from Decidueye, which earns us a respective Sneasler, who was impressed by Surseoff's battling skills. With Sneasler's help, we now have access to the entirety of the Highlands, which Surseoff used to catch Bronzor, Bronzong, Hisuian Sneasel after resetting until one dropped a Razor Claw, Gligar after resetting until one dropped a Razor Fang, Magnezone, Gibble, Nosepass, Hisuian Voltorb, Rotom, Misdreavus, Clefairy, Cleffa, Chimecho, Chingling, Elekid, Electabuzz, Goomy, Yanmega, Cranidos, Shieldon, Drapion, Golem, Steelix, and Gabite. With the majority of the new Pokemon now caught, we made our way to the Moonview Arena where Melly insisted on being served the second beatdown. Surseoff immediately took out Skuntank's reinforcements with back-to-back aerial aces before powering up Samurai with Sword Stance and letting it loose on the lone Methodist. Adamant then swung by to break up our skirmish before telling us to help him make some soothing bombs for Electrode. With said bombs in hand, Surseoff stepped forward to face the frenzied Lord of the Hollow, whose battle boiled down to running away until it fired off its super move before unloading a bomb bombardment at its face. Soon enough, it's lights out for Electrode as Ingo then strolls on in to give everyone a speech about the wonders of working together. We then talked to Professor Laventon back at base camp, who informed us that we'd barely put a dent in the amount of research points required for Surseoff to increase his rank. So instead of reporting to Commander Komodo to inform him of our mission's success, Surseoff decided to run back through every area to catch any Pokemon we may still be missing. These Pokemon were Togekiss, Blissey, Gengar, Raichu, Hisuian Sliggoo, Togetic, Dusknoir, Magby, Bastiodon, and Rampardos. While we were running around, we managed to forge a few evolution items which Surseoff put to use when evolving our female Combee into Vespiquen, Gabite into Garchomp, Piplup into Prinplup, Prinplup into Empoleon, Nosepass into Probopass while we were in the Coronet Highlands, Tangela into Tangrowth after learning Ancient Power, Hisuian Sliggoo into Hisuian Goodra while there was raining, Electabuzz into Electivire with an Electrizer, Magmar into Magmortar with a Magmarizer, Hisuian Sneasel into Sneasler with a Razor Claw during the day, Sneasel into Weavile with a Razor Claw at night, Gligar into Gliscor with a Razor Fang at night, Hisuian Voltorb into Hisuian Electrode with a Leaf Stone, Clefairy into Clefable with a Moonstone, Mischievous into Mismagius with a Dusk Stone, Armail Curlia into Gallade with a Dawnstone, and Machoke into Machamp with a Linking Cord. Sadly, all this catching and evolving failed to yield us enough research points to increase our rank, so Surseoff resorted to using the fieldlands Snorlax as a training dummy to grind out the remaining points we required. At long last, Surseoff could receive his 5th star from Captain Celine, which would allow us to travel to the Alabaster Icelands to face Hisui's final noble, Avalugg. Before we could go to the game's final area, Akari decided she wanted one more match with Surseoff and was quickly proven why that was such a horrible idea. When we arrive at the Icelands, we witness our dear professor freezing his arky ass off before Irda and Adamant swing by to tell us to head over to Avalugg's legacy. Once there, we meet Irda's teacher Garrick, who wished to battle us to prove whether or not Surseoff had a pure heart. However, the only thing that was proven was how fast Typhlosion was able to melt his Arctic comrades, as we were then told we needed a chunk of eternal ice to make some soothing bombs for Avalugg. Luckily, Sabi just happened to drop on by with the only means for us to obtain said item, and after a game of hide-and-seek that took Surseoff to the Labyrinthine Snow Point Temple, we were challenged to a 3v1 against Sabi's elite Pokemon. However, because Surseoff had a Torterra on his team, we were able to completely bypass whatever challenge this battle was supposed to entail. We then made our way to the temple's roof where Sabi's brave Braviary decided to test our might, which instantly resulted in a one-turn KO as the valiant avian then pledged itself to Surseoff after he cheered it up with his flute solo. With Braviary's aid, we're able to glide down to Avalugg's legacy and score a chunk of eternal ice, which we hand to Garrick, who tells Surseoff to meet him at the Ice Peak Arena once we're ready to face Avalugg. Before we can do that, Surseoff had one last catching compilation to get through, so he trekked across the Icelands in order to catch Hisuian Braviary, Swinub, Paliswine, Glalie, Snorunt, Snover, Rufflet, Hisuian Zorua, Bergmite, Abomasnow, Frostlass, Riolu, Scizor, and Gardevoir. With all the experience we gained from acquiring all these Pokemon, we are able to evolve Bergmite into Hisuian Avalugg, Hisuian Zorua into Hisuian Zoroark, Paliswine into Mamoswine after learning Ancient Power, and Riolu into Lucario during the day once its friendship was high enough. Sarceus then began his journey to acquire all the wisps in each of Hisui's regions, as well as catching most of the unknown littered throughout the game. Keep a pin in the word most because it will become relevant later, but for now, what's relevant is the fact Sarceus managed to run into his 4th full-dodge shiny before the setup for his fire was fully complete. Eventually, we managed to scoop up every last wisp throughout Hisui and were able to catch the final Pokemon available to us, Spiritomb. However, there's still one last task Sarceus must complete before he reaches his endgame, and that's hitting research level 6 with every single Pokemon so he can earn enough research points to earn his 6th and 7th star. So after a few hours of stunning, fainting, catching, and feeding wild Pokemon, Sarceus was able to scrounge up enough research points to rank up and receive his 6th star from Captain Celine. And it should come as no surprise that all this running around gave Sarceus plenty of chances to find more full-dodge shinies. The first being this Parasect in the Coronet highlands, the second was a male Combi in the Cobalt coastlands, and the final full-dodge shiny was this Kadabra in the Obsidian fieldlands. Speaking of the fieldlands, that's where we spent the next several hours knocking out Alpha Blissey's in order to gain the experience points necessary for all our Pokemon to learn and master the moves needed to increase their research levels. This ultimately meant trekking back over to the Alpha Snorlax so we could put all these new moves to use, which is a process that also took several hours. Before leaving, I made sure to make Sarceus pay the Alpha Snorlax and Blissey for their services, and it was informed by Professor Laventon that we thankfully earned enough research points to receive our 7th star, which will make all Pokemon obey Sarceus regardless of their level. With all the pieces now in place, we made our way over to the Ice Peak Arena within the Icelands, where we would face the Titanic Lord of the Tundra. Its simple 4-phase loop was laughable compared to the trials we just endured, and within minutes, Sarceus was able to ice the noble Avalugg. It takes Garrick a moment to grasp that a mere child managed to best his clan's revered noble, but Adamant and Sabi eventually swing by to tell him everything will be alright as long as Sarceus's around. When we return to Jubilife Village, we make sure to catch the final 3 unknown before triggering the endgame calamity. Commander Commodore rightfully assumed Sarceus had something to do with this before throwing him out of the village, where Jubilant Volo was more than happy to scoop us up. He takes us to the ancient retreat where a woman named Miss Kogita tried in vain to tell Sarceus that he had a responsibility to save the world. Before we could tell her just how uninterested we were in doing that, we were approached by Celine's Abra, who gave Sarceus access to his pastures back in Jubilife Village. We then get the chance to choose a traveling buddy between Adamant and Irida, with Adamant assuring Sarceus that he'll make the correct choice. That he will, Adamant. That he will. But with that, Sarceus has successfully set up his full odds file, which he has no desire of giving up anytime soon. Without Professor Laventon waiting to tally up our research points at every area's base camp, we're free to catch as many Pokemon as we want without increasing their research levels. But as much as Sarceus would love to begin his shiny hunting adventure, I've already made a prior commitment which some of y'all are probably aware of. You all managed to pull through and smash the like goal I set for my Kanto only playthrough, so stay tuned for my Johto only playthrough, which will be in the works as soon as I've finished making this video. This video took such a long time to film and script, so I wanted to thank all of you who've been waiting patiently for that video. With that said, thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see all of you in the next video. Goodbye.